Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is sort of attempting to call Trump's bluff. One of the things that we've been hearing from Trump for some time now, in place of an actual stance, an actual policy position, he just says, number one, Russia's invasion of Ukraine never would have happened. And number two, I could end it in 24 hours. Never giving specifics. Now, in private, he's given some specifics. We'll circle back to that after playing this clip of Zelensky. But essentially, he runs on, as so often is the case, this unrealistic, vague, meaningless stance, which is I could just magically end the war without giving anything in the form of substance. And Zelensky here is calling his bluff, saying, if you actually have this plan as you pretend to, then how about you reveal it to me now? Because I'd like the war to be ended. But Zelensky has, as we all do, some suspicions that the reason Trump's not revealing it is because it would be devastating for Ukraine, or it's just a meaningless statement. So here's Zelensky in a recent Bloomberg interview.
I looked at them in terms of Ukraine.
President Trump said he'll end the war before he's elected.
Yeah, I heard
What do you make of that?
Я скажу чесно.
Let me be frank.
Давайте, наприклад, це вирішення.
For example, well, the decision is on US public. But let me just have some reasoning. Так, але для вас це важливо.
Так, ну давайте уявимо,
Yes. So let us imagine
переможець Трамп.
that the winner might be Trump in November.
Знає, як закінчити війну.
And he knows how to end the war. He has a plan.
Я, як президент війни,
Me, as the president of a country at war, not a theoretical person, but a real-life person, I would like to be prepared.
мільйонів, ми дуже велика.
We are 40 millions. We're a big country, and we really depend on the aid from the world. And we depend on the aid and the position and the stance of the US. So I would like to understand, what would it mean to finish war fast? Tomorrow, do we want the war to be over tomorrow? The war didn't to start. It was Putin who started it. But I hope you agree that it would be fair. If Trump knows how to end this war, he should tell us today, because
Якщо там є
if
ризики,
there are risks to Ukraine's independence,
ризики,
if there are risks that we will lose the statehood,
підготуватися.
we want to be prepared for this. We want to understand whether in November we will have the powerful support of the US or we'll be all alone.
Right, so there's two elements to this. The first is what I'm referring to as calling his bluff. Zelensky has to have a certain amount of respect, given that if Trump were to win, God forbid, and he were the most powerful person in the United States, then that power is something that Zelensky would not want to alienate. But he is sort of calling the bluff, saying, why don't you reveal this magical plan then? If you actually could end the war in 24 hours, what difference does it make if you have the details, if Biden's implementing it or you're implementing it? But the part two to Zelensky's statement there is, and also if the plan isn't the magical one that wouldn't harm Ukraine at all, and instead it's something like what Trump told to Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, which would be just giving Russia whatever they want, including violating the sovereignty of Ukraine, and as he put it, not protecting their statehood, then Zelensky's saying, I want to be prepared. I want to be able to prepare as the president of Ukraine for a situation where the United States turns on us, their ally, like that. And just as a reminder, the only time we've heard anything about what this plan would be was what I referred to, which was this Mar-a-Lago meeting between Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban, or Prime Minister of Turkey, as Trump once described him, Viktor Orban, and Trump, and they love each other, both sort of authoritarians, and so they have that admiration for one another, and they had this friendly meeting. Coming out of it, it was reported that Viktor Orban was telling people that Trump's plan, as he confirmed to Orban, is just give Putin what he'd like. Which that's not really for us to decide. Ukraine's not going to go along with that. Zelensky said here, are we going to have to go at this alone? But our power is significant in this equation, and the aid that we're giving does matter. So if Trump says we're not going to give aid and what we support is Russia doing whatever they like, then that would be disastrous for Ukraine. And before getting to the second Zelensky clip, I hate to do this to you, but it's important for what leads into that. Here is Marjorie Taylor Greene pushing a talking point that now Trump plays into and much of MAGA, that what's preventing peace right now is Ukraine. That's what they espouse inaccurately often.
And while I'm still committed to saying no money to Ukraine, and that country needs to find peace, not war, and while I will look at a camera and directly tell Zelensky, you better leave your hands off of our sons and daughters because they're not dying over there.
Yeah, and Zelensky has never wanted, never alluded to, never requested U.S. soldiers to be involved, just asking for aid that comes in the form of weapons, arms, supplies that first are most often created in the United States. So we invest in companies in the United States and then send the stuff, not anything close to sending U.S. soldiers into Ukraine to fight against Russian troops. But that dishonesty aside, imagine saying that country needs to find peace. Ukraine? What about Russia, the one preventing peace every day by choosing to continue their full-scale invasion? And I'm still, years now, after these talking points started being spread around, unsure of what their reasoning really is. I can't get a logical answer as to how it's not a complete distortion of reality to say what's continuing the war is Ukraine choosing to defend itself, and then the United States supporting through aid Ukraine's defense of itself, and not Russia's invasion of the country. And if Russia finds out that the U.S. under Trump is not going to send aid, aren't they going to be even more pumped about doing what they're currently doing, but it would be easier because Ukraine would be weaker? So the best path to peace is Russia being discouraged against doing what it's currently doing, thinking it doesn't have any shot of being successful, and thus they need to come to some peace agreement. Now, on a peace agreement and a potential ceasefire as the first step of that, Zelensky had this to say.
Paying with our lives. Which country will be responsible? It's easy to just talk about ceasefire, but it's very difficult to enforce it, to keep it. It's very difficult to find those who will respond why the ceasefire
But we're going to see
broken.
more calls for a ceasefire, especially as the world politically is moving to the right and potentially moving to the right in the United States. You have said this war is dependent on U.S. aid. I want to ask you, did you watch the presidential debate between Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump?
Передусім.
So, first and foremost, the ceasefire is an important element in any plan to finish the war. So, a ceasefire is not finishing the war. We've been there. It would be just a frozen conflict. And it would be frozen for the aggressor, because it would be frozen on our territory, and our people would be under the occupation. This gives a clear advantage to one side. That's why it's easy to offer different proposals of ceasefires. But what's important? It's important to find answer what would come after.
So sometimes with the translator trying to nail it perfectly, it's a little bit hard to follow, but what he's stating is, of course, we'd like a ceasefire first, but that would freeze things where they are. What is really important, and this is what I don't think MTG, Trump, and others ever take time to consider, is what comes after that. Because if you just say, hey, we're going to pause, Russia, you do your best to sort of recoup, get ready again, and then when you're ready, you go violate that ceasefire and continue the invasion. Probably not the best plan. If you can get a worthwhile peace plan that doesn't include giving Russia exactly what it set out to do here, which was take over sovereign territory, then great. But that's not what Putin's on board with. Putin has insane demands for his peace plans, and then he sort of blames the victim and says, well, they're not accepting my peace plan that require them to give things that they have no obligation to give. And that seems to be Trump's peace plan as well. Yet another reason why someone who actually understands the importance of supporting our allies and these international organizations like NATO, relationships that we have that cause a more stable world, understands the importance of that, is someone we need in the White House and not Donald Trump. Let me know what you thought of that in the comments. If you want to get the extra episode of the show daily, you can do so by clicking the join button below.